For almost a century, one brand sits in more American garages than any other. Not Stanley, not Snap-on, not Milwaukee, Craftsman. A red and black logo stamped into steel, hanging on pegboards from Maine to California. Wrenches passed from father to son, socket sets given as graduation gifts, screwdrivers that outlast the houses they help build. For decades, if you open a toolbox in any American basement, any backyard shed, any pickup truck parked on any job site in the country, the odds are better than even that something inside carries that name. And the reason is not the steel. The reason is a promise. If a Craftsman hand tool ever fails, for any reason, at any time, you walk into any Sears store in America and lay it on the counter. No receipt, no proof of purchase, no time limit. The clerk hands you a new one, and you walk out. That is the deal. That is the reason millions of Americans choose Craftsman over everything else on the shelf.
Not because the wrench is the best wrench ever forged, because the company behind it makes a guarantee so absolute that it feels less like a warranty and more like a handshake. The guarantee is still written on paper today. The company that made it mean something is gone. This is the rise and fall of Craftsman, the warranty brand Sears quietly destroyed. The story begins in 1927, inside the Sears Roebuck and Company headquarters in Chicago. A man named Arthur Barrows runs the hardware buying department. His job is not to manufacture tools. Sears does not manufacture anything. His job is to find the best tools other companies make, stamp the Sears name on them, and sell them through the catalog and the stores. The problem is the name. Sears sells tools under a scattershot collection of house brands that no customer remembers and no customer trusts. Barrows wants a single name, one brand. Something a farmer in Kansas and a mechanic in Philadelphia can both ask for by name and both expect the same quality when they get it. He finds what he is looking for in the trademark registry. A small, defunct tool company called Marion Craftsman has let its name lapse. Barrows buys the rights for roughly $500. In today's money, about $9,000. For that price, Sears gets a word that will become one of the most recognized brand names in American retail history, Craftsman. The first tools appear in the Sears catalog in 1927. They are aimed at farmers, the backbone of the Sears customer base at the time. But Barrows is already thinking bigger. His successor, a buyer named Tom Dunlap, pushes the line further. Dunlap looks at the clunky cast iron wrenches and soft steel screwdrivers that dominate the market and decides they are not good enough. He introduces chrome plating, full polish, high-impact handles. Barrows himself doubts the move. He cannot see why anyone would chrome plate a tool someone is going to slug the hell out of. But the chrome tools sell 6 times better than the old ones the following year. That is how a brand finds its identity. Not through a boardroom strategy document. Through a buyer who bets that the man holding the wrench wants something that feels right in his hand. And then comes the warranty, the promise that changes everything. Sears does not make the tools. It never has. Craftsman wrenches are forged by companies like Moore Drop Forging and New Britain Machine. Screwdrivers come from Western Forge in Colorado Springs. Ratchets come from Iasco and later from Danaher. Sears designs the specifications, negotiates the contracts, stamps the Craftsman name on the finished product, and sells it through its own stores. That is the entire business model. Sears is the middleman. But the warranty turns the middleman into something more. Because the guarantee does not come from the forge. It comes from Sears. It says that no matter who made the tool, no matter when you bought it, no matter what happened to it, Sears will replace it. The company selling you the wrench is personally standing behind it, forever. That is not a return policy. That is a relationship. And it works. It works because Sears has something in 1927 that almost no other retailer in America can match: reach. The Sears catalog goes to nearly every household in the country. By the 1930s, Sears stores begin opening in cities and suburbs across every state. And in every single one of those stores, the Craftsman warranty means the same thing. Walk in, lay it down, walk out with a new one. Think about what that means for a working man in 1955. He buys a set of Craftsman combination wrenches. He uses them every day for 20 years. One cracks. He drives to Sears on his lunch break. The clerk does not ask when he bought it, does not ask for a receipt, does not inspect it for abuse, just hands him a replacement and says,
have a good day. That man tells his friends, he tells his son, he tells his neighbor, and every single one of them walks into Sears and buys Craftsman. The warranty is not a cost center. It is the most powerful sales engine in American tool retail. Every free replacement is an advertisement that walks out the door in somebody's hand. The brand grows through the 1940s and 50s and 60s like a vine climbing a wall. Sears is expanding. America is suburbanizing. Every new house needs a garage. Every new garage needs a toolbox. And every toolbox, more often than not, is filled with Craftsman. The numbers are staggering. Between 1965 and 1989 alone, Craftsman sells 400 million screwdrivers, 44 million pliers, 23 million adjustable wrenches. Think about how many garages, how many kitchen drawers, how many tool belts those went into.
Think about how many fathers handed them down to their sons. By the late 1960s, Sears is not just a retailer. It is an American institution. In 1969, Sears sales alone account for roughly 1% of the entire United States economy. 2/3 of Americans shop there in any given quarter. 1 in 3 carries a Sears credit card. The company employs so many people that roughly 1 out of every 200 American workers receives a Sears paycheck. It builds the tallest building in the world, the Sears Tower in Chicago, 1,451 feet of steel and glass. 110 stories rising over the city that made the catalog famous. And inside every Sears, on every tool wall, on every pegboard, in every glass case, sits Craftsman, the crown jewel. Alongside Kenmore appliances and Die-Hard batteries, Craftsman is one of 3 house brands that define what it means to shop at Sears. But Craftsman is the one people feel something about. Nobody writes poems about a washing machine, but a man will keep a Craftsman ratchet for 40 years. And when his son picks it up after he is gone, the chrome is dull but unbroken, and the mechanism still clicks the way it did the day it was new. That is not brand loyalty, that is inheritance. And the reach goes further than the garage. In 1991, Sears launches the Craftsman Club, a loyalty program that becomes one of the oldest in American retail. The brand sponsors the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series for over a decade. Craftsman is not just a tool brand anymore. It is a piece of American working culture, woven into the identity of men who build things for a living, and men who build things because their fathers taught them how. The secret to all of this, the reason the quality holds for as long as it does, is the supplier network. And that network is tighter than anyone outside the company realizes. In 1965, Sears takes the unusual step of becoming a partial owner of one of its own suppliers. Western Forge, based in Colorado Springs, Colorado, is a joint venture created to manufacture screwdrivers, pliers, and adjustable wrenches exclusively for the Craftsman line. At its peak in 1990, Western Forge employs more than 1,000 workers. Every tool leaving that plant is stamped with the letters WF and the slogan, Mile High Quality. Sears does not just buy from Western Forge, Sears controls Western Forge. And that control is how the quality stays consistent across 4 decades. This is the mechanism most people never see. Craftsman is a brand, not a factory. The tools are made by contractors. But for most of the 20th century, the contracts behind that brand are held tight. The suppliers are American. The forges are domestic. The oversight is direct. And the warranty is real because the product behind it is real. That is what makes what comes next so much worse. The decline does not arrive as a single event. There is no fire. There is no hostile takeover. There is no scandal. What happens to Craftsman is slower than that, and quieter, and in many ways more devastating than any of those things would have been. It begins with sourcing. As late as 2008, Sears catalogs still carry the line that all Craftsman sockets and wrenches are proudly made in the United States of America. By 2010, that is no longer true. Sears begins shifting the contracts for its core mechanics tools, the ratchets, the sockets, the wrenches, away from American forges and toward factories in China and Taiwan. The production is handled through Apex Tool Group, and the quality drops almost immediately. Tradespeople notice. The ratchets feel different. The tolerances are looser. The chrome flakes. The teeth skip under torque. On forums and in shop talk across the country, mechanics start saying what Sears does not want to hear. The tools are not what they used to be, and the prices on the shelf have not gone down. Then the warranty starts to change. Not through a public announcement, not through a press release or a policy update. It changes the way a riverbank erodes, slowly, quietly, one store clerk at a time. By 2009, Sears employees begin enforcing restrictions that appear nowhere in the written guarantee. Rusted tools are rejected. Returns are capped at 3 items per day. Customers who have walked into Sears their entire lives and never once been questioned are suddenly told their wrench does not qualify. The promise that built the brand is being withdrawn, one refusal at a time, by people who never made the promise in the first place. Stories start showing up in local news and on tool forums. A mechanic in Kentucky is restoring a 1967 Plymouth. His socket wrench breaks. He feels relief when his local Lowe's starts carrying Craftsman, thinking the warranty still means what it always meant. He drives over, puts the broken ratchet on the counter, and the clerk tells him they cannot replace any tool that was not sold at a Lowe's store. The warranty on paper says one thing, the person behind the counter says something else, and the mechanic drives home with a broken wrench and a broken promise. Multiply that by 1,000 stores, by 10,000 customers, by a decade, and here's the part that makes it irreversible. The stores start closing. The man behind the closings is Edward Lampert. In 2005, his hedge fund, ESL Investments, engineers a merger between Kmart and Sears to create Sears Holdings. Lampert becomes chairman and eventually chief executive. What follows is not a turnaround. It is a liquidation disguised as a business strategy. Lampert strips the company for parts. In 2014, he spins off Land's End, worth roughly $1.3 billion at the time of transfer. In 2015, he creates a real estate investment trust called Seritage Growth Properties, which buys 266 of Sears' best store locations and leases them back to the company at market rent. Think about that for a moment. The stores Sears built are now landlords charging Sears to exist inside them. Revenue collapses from over $53 billion in 2006 to roughly $16.7 billion by 2018. The workforce drops from 355,000 employees to fewer than 90,000. More than 3,000 stores close. And with every store that disappears, the Craftsman warranty becomes harder to honor. You cannot walk into a Sears that does not exist. In January of 2017, Sears sells the Craftsman brand to Stanley Black & Decker for a net present value of approximately $900 million, $525 million at closing, $250 million at the end of year 3, and royalty payments on every new Craftsman product sold for the next 15 years. Sears also keeps a perpetual license to sell Craftsman through its own stores, royalty-free, for 15 years. At the time of the deal, only about 10% of Craftsman products are sold outside of Sears. Think about what that sale really means. Sears is not selling a factory. It does not own one. It is not selling inventory. It is not selling a workforce or a supply chain or a forge. It is selling a name, a word, a memory, the 400 million screwdrivers, the warranty that never expired, the pegboard in your father's garage. All of it reduced to a trademark on a piece of paper, handed to the same corporation that already owns DeWalt. And the man buying it knows exactly what he is getting. James Loree, the chief executive of Stanley Black & Decker, describes the state of the products he has just purchased in an interview with a financial publication. The tools, he says, have been left to devolve over time, to the point where they are not the high-quality, respectable products they once were. They are, in his words, in sad shape. That is the buyer, on the day of the purchase, describing what he paid $900 million for. If you have watched our video on DeWalt, you already know what Stanley Black & Decker is capable of when it believes in a brand. DeWalt was a dormant name that Stanley revived in 1992, invested in relentlessly with new battery platforms and professional-grade innovation, and turned into the leading professional cordless brand in North America. DeWalt gets engineering budgets. DeWalt gets dedicated factories. DeWalt gets the kind of sustained, decade-over-decade investment that separates a brand from a label. Craftsman gets a different kind of attention. Stanley Black & Decker relaunches the brand in August of 2018 with a refreshed logo and more than 1,200 redesigned products. The company sets a target of redesigning close to 1,500 tools in total. Distribution moves from the dying Sears network to Lowe's, Ace Hardware, and Amazon. Loree notes that Craftsman is the single most
unfulfilled search term on Amazon in the entire tools category. The demand is still there. The memory is still alive. But what is missing is a product worth remembering. Lurie sets a reshoring target. 40% of products will be made in America at launch, rising to 70% within a few years. It is a bold promise. It sounds like the old Craftsman. In May of 2019, the company announces a $90 million factory in Fort Worth, Texas, 425,000 square feet, projected to employ 500 workers forging sockets, ratchets, and wrenches. The label says, "Made in the United States of America," with global materials. It is supposed to be the proof that Craftsman is coming home. The plant opens in 2020. It never reaches its targets. Equipment problems slow production. The workforce never grows past 175 employees, a third of the projection. In March of 2023, Stanley Black & Decker announces the Fort Worth factory will close, and the remaining workers will be laid off. And in Colorado Springs, the other end of the story is already finished. Western Forge, the company Sears co-founded in 1965 to make Craftsman screwdrivers, loses the Craftsman contract when the brand changes hands. In April of 2017, Sears sues Western Forge for ending their supply agreement. The relationship is poisoned. In February of 2020, Western Forge shuts down permanently. All 164 employees lose their jobs. The chief executive of its parent company, Ideal Industries, releases a statement. "Our employees delivered high-quality product," he says. "They did everything we asked of them. We just could not survive the impact of the Craftsman move." A plant that made screwdrivers for Craftsman for 54 years, gone. Not because the work was bad, because the brand left. Meanwhile, in March of 2019, Stanley Black & Decker sues Sears for breach of contract and trademark infringement. Sears, using its perpetual license, has launched something called the Craftsman Ultimate Collection and is marketing its remaining stores as the real home of the broadest Craftsman assortment. The former parent and the new owner are now in a legal fight over the same name. The brand is being pulled in two directions by two companies, neither of which made the tools that earned its reputation. Sears Holdings finalizes its bankruptcy in 2019. Filed in October of 2018, it is the end of a company that once employed hundreds of thousands and built the tallest building in the world. What remains is a handful of stores, a mountain of debt, and a settlement in which Lampert and his insiders pay roughly $42 million to resolve claims from creditors who say the company was stripped from the inside. And the warranty, the thing that built the entire empire. It is now something else entirely. If you own a Craftsman tool made before 2018, and there is no Sears near you anymore, and there almost certainly is not, you can try Lowe's. But Lowe's stocks tools with part numbers that begin with CMHT, a different system than the old Sears codes. If your tool does not match their inventory, the clerk has a documented reason to say no. You can call the Craftsman customer service line. You can fill out a form on the website. You can mail the broken tool back at your own expense and wait for a replacement. For a $3 screwdriver, the postage costs more than the tool. The promise has not been formally revoked. It has been made so difficult to use that it no longer functions as a promise. That is not a bug. That is the system. Somewhere in America tonight, in a basement or a backyard shed or a garage on a rural route that has not changed much in 40 years, a man is reaching into a toolbox his father gave him. The wrenches inside are Craftsman. The chrome is dull but unbroken. The ratchet still clicks. The screwdriver handle is cracked along the grain from decades of use, but the blade has never bent. He does not think about Arthur Barrows, or Tom Dunlap, or Western Forge, or Edward Lampert. He does not know that the brand on those tools has been bought and sold, and stripped and rebuilt, and closed and reopened under a different roof. He just knows that the wrench works, that it has always worked, that his father trusted it, and so does he. The new Craftsman tools sit on a shelf at the Lowe's down the highway. They come in fresh packaging, with a logo that looks almost the same. They carry a warranty, with terms and conditions, and fine print, and a phone number. They are competent, mid-priced, and respectable enough for a weekend project. But the man in the garage is not reaching for those. He is reaching for the ones with the old stamp, the ones that were forged in Ohio and Colorado by workers who punched a clock and drove home on the same roads their whole lives, the ones that came with a promise so simple it did not need a website or a phone tree or a form. That is how you lose a brand built on trust. You do not lose it in a bankruptcy court. You do not lose it in a hostile takeover or a factory fire or a single catastrophic decision. You lose it one small choice at a time across 30 years. You move the manufacturing overseas and leave the prices the same. You let the clerks start saying no. You close the stores one at a time until there is nowhere left to walk in with a broken wrench. You sell the name to someone who describes what you have left as being in sad shape. And by the time anyone notices, the people who remember what the promise used to mean are gone from the building. The tools survive. The steel endures. The warranty, written on paper, still exists in words. But the handshake behind it is gone.